As America celebrated its 200th birthday as an independent nation, its birthplace, Philadelphia, played host to millions of tourists and hundreds of business gatherings. Philadelphia made history that summer, but not for the bicentennial. It was the mysterious death of 34 people that left a tragic legacy and launched the most extensive medical investigation in history. Summer of 1976 was a busy time for the city of Philadelphia, filled with bicentennial celebrations, tourist activities, and business conventions. It should have been a time of celebration for city officials as well, but they faced a number of unexpected difficulties. Sanitation workers staged a work slowdown over a wage dispute, and the mountains of uncollected garbage created serious health concerns. Then there was a terrorist threat. An anonymous tip warning of possible violence at the upcoming American Legionnaires convention in protest against recent U.S. foreign policy decisions. That convention was to be headquartered here at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, one of Philadelphia's finest, and it was having some of its own problems.
Hello, I received a service call. I'm here to check the air conditioner.
Sure, come on in.
The hotel's air conditioning system was malfunctioning, and repairmen were doing all they could to get it up and running before the convention. Hotel security was also working to make sure that prostitutes were kept away from the hotel during the busy summer season. On July 21st, 4,500 Legionnaires from around the state of Pennsylvania arrived in Philadelphia for their annual get-together. It was a time for business and to renew old friendships.
Everybody was looking forward to it, a jovial time where we naturally had meetings to attend and so forth, but normally the business would be over by noon, and we could then go out and visit the city.
I had been to 3 or 4 conventions, I think, in Pittsburgh, one in Harrisburg, and I really didn't know that much about Philly. I knew it's a big city. I was anxious, too.
After 3 days of business and pleasure, the 4,500 Legionnaires returned home. The convention had ended, but a mystery began to unfold.
Lord, welcome into your presence.
8 days later, in Williamstown, Pennsylvania, Legionnaires James Dolan and John Ralph died suddenly under mysterious circumstances. Both had attended the convention in Philadelphia.
I don't think we've had 2 Korean veterans die in the same year, let alone 2 days apart from each other.
The official cause of death, pneumonia. The coroner described their lungs as resembling Brillo pads. Within days, other Legionnaires fell ill.
I laid around the house for about 2 days, and I just kept feeling worse and worse. My oldest boy was there, and he said, "Dad, I'm taking you to the doctor. There must be something wrong with you."
The mysterious illness struck swiftly. First headache, then muscle and chest pain, and a fever which could get as high as 107 degrees. Within 3 weeks, 11 more Legionnaires died.
And I thought, boy, here I am. If I'm going to die, I mean, I had 5 kids. That makes you think a lot. And I thought, oh boy, I hope that's not me.
Authorities in the state capital of Harrisburg feared an epidemic and quickly called in the Centers for Disease Control to investigate. Dr. David Frazier led the investigation.
We had a situation which, when we first heard about the problem, there had been 4 deaths. Quickly thereafter, we heard of 11 deaths, and it increased from that point. So this was occurring from unknown cause in a major city in the United States, and had to have everybody's attention.
Frazier's first task, to find out why some Legionnaires were getting sick and others weren't.
Which, at its most basic, involves comparing what people did who became sick with what people did who stayed well.
The investigation would be complicated. The Legionnaires were spread throughout the state, and gathering information would be difficult. Dr. Frazier had some theories, but little else. The investigation into the death of the American Legionnaires would become the largest and most complicated medical investigation in history. By the time Dr. David Frazier and his team arrived in Philadelphia, the death rate among the infected Legionnaires was 20% and rising. 11 Legionnaires were dead, and 39 more were seriously ill. All of the Legionnaires who died had a form of pneumonia, but investigators had no idea what was causing it.
There are more deaths in Pennsylvania from a disease still not identified.
Because of
The outbreak was worldwide news, and the press had given it a name.
Ever since the Legionnaires' disease became a major national story.
The daily press reports fueled the fear many citizens felt. And nowhere was that fear more evident than in the town of Monessen, Pennsylvania. Andrew Hornack was a bus driver who had driven a drum and bugle corps to the Legionnaires' convention in Philadelphia. After he arrived home, he fell ill and died from Legionnaire's disease. Although he was extremely popular, few of his friends went to pay their last respects.
Well, we've had a very sparse visitation at the funeral home because our people seem to feel that there might be some danger involved to their own life.
Dr. Lewis Polk was Philadelphia's health commissioner and understood people's fears.
If you deal with a catastrophe of a known cause, whether it's a flood, a fire, an earthquake, whatever, even though it may cause a lot of damage and even kill a lot of people, somehow as human beings, all of us can deal with a known cause catastrophe better than an unknown cause, a true mystery.
Dr. Frazier and the Centers for Disease Control needed to gather information. Investigators crisscrossed the state to interview sick Legionnaires.
At the Go-Getters breakfast on Friday, did you have the coffee?
Just the coffee, no rolls.
They sent detailed questionnaires to everyone who attended the convention.
On Friday the 23rd, how often did you ride the main elevators? Man, I don't know.
They collected hundreds of dust, air, water, and ice samples, as well as rat and pigeon droppings from every hotel used by the Legionnaires. Anything which might be of interest to the biologists and toxicologists of the CDC was sent to Atlanta for analysis. And tissue samples from the autopsies were also collected and analyzed. CDC investigators had plenty of competing theories. Swine flu was at the top of their list since the symptoms were similar. Parrot fever was also a possibility, a disease spread by sick pigeons. Perhaps a massive case of food poisoning caused by a problem at one of the convention's half-dozen hotels.
There were some thoughts early on that people in town for a convention possibly might have overindulged in one of several ways, whether it's drinking or sex or something.
Was it a new strain of venereal disease called supergonorrhea? The symptoms were similar to supergonorrhea, and there had been 2 outbreaks in other cities earlier that year. Or did the outbreak stem from the rats and the recent sanitation strike, which left mountains of uncollected garbage in the very streets the Legionnaires walked through? And what about the anonymous tip about a possible terrorist attack? Was it possible the Legionnaires had been poisoned? But one of the most puzzling questions was why some Legionnaires developed the disease while others did not. After Legionnaire Bob McGarry's roommate developed pneumonia, the CDC wanted him to get to a hospital right away.
When I told them what I was there for, they rolled out the red carpet and they gave me a physical like I never had before in my life. They wanted every type of saliva, urine, and anything else that I could give them to be sent to the Disease Control Center in Atlanta, Georgia.
What we found, though, in our survey of roommates, was that being a roommate of somebody with Legionnaire's disease didn't increase your chance of getting Legionnaire's disease. And that was a very important finding, because it suggested that, first of all, exposure wasn't occurring in the bedrooms there, and it also suggested it wasn't spread person to person.
Within 48 hours, the first tissue specimens analyzed by the CDC eliminated typhoid, the Lassa and Marburg viruses, pertussis, and the plague. And after 5 days, they eliminated many more, including herpes, mumps, and measles viruses, as well as some of their top suspects. Blood tests also eliminated the possibility that it was super gonorrhea. The CDC had eliminated a number of possibilities, but they still couldn't identify the killer. The questionnaires yielded some important information.
Among the various hotels we surveyed, the highest rate of illness that looked like Legionnaire's disease was among people who were registered at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, and specifically in the week of the American Legion Convention.
However, there were some victims of Legionnaire's disease who weren't Legionnaires at all, hadn't attended their convention, and never set foot inside the Bellevue Stratford Hotel.
There were people who walked along the sidewalk in front of the Bellevue Stratford who got sick, who never went inside, or on the street across the way. Indeed, we found that the more time people spent on the sidewalk in front of the Bellevue Stratford, the more likely they were to get sick.
But for some unknown reason, none of the employees of the Bellevue Stratford Hotel contracted the disease. What were the common factors among those who did? Most were over the age of 50. 17 of the first 21 fatalities were smokers, and some had other underlying illnesses. When Frazier reviewed the Bellevue Stratford's employees, he discovered that on average, they were 10 years younger and healthier than those who got sick. By now, 27 were dead. The death toll was mounting, and Frazier still had no idea what was killing these people or how it was being spread. Dr. Frazier and his team were convinced the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease had something to do with the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, but they hadn't found the connection.
It's just amazing. You just can't figure it out.
Why some would get sick and others did not.
Right. Because, as I said, I slept in the same room with two fellows that are dead.
Frazier believed that the agent or cause of the disease came from somewhere near the Bellevue Stratford Hotel. And since individuals on the street had also developed the disease, that told him something else.
We had some evidence that it was not waterborne or foodborne. And so we were developing the idea that this might be an airborne infection, but we had some additional questions to answer about that.
But if the agent was inside the hotel, Frazier's medical detectives couldn't find it. And since the outbreak was slowing down, he believed the cause might now be gone. His only hope was that the scientists in the lab could find it. At the University of Connecticut, Dr. William Sunderman received an anonymous letter saying that the Legionnaires were intentionally poisoned while in Philadelphia. Sunderman turned the letter over to the FBI, but Sunderman was an expert on nickel carbonyl, a clear, odorless liquid, easily transformed into a lethal gas. He did a little of his own research.
Nickel could spread through the air, that it certainly could cause pneumonia, that it caused a particular pattern of pneumonia that was not so different from what we were seeing in the Legionnaires' cases as to be obviously excludable.
Tests on liver samples revealed that nickel was present in those who died.
Dr. William Sunderman, the chief toxicologist doing the research work at the University of Connecticut, has pretty well established that it was nickel carbonyl.
But Dr. Sunderman's discovery was not the breakthrough. After days of testing, researchers suspected that nickel was peeling off of the scalpels used during the autopsies. When plastic scalpels were used, the nickel was no longer present. Investigators were no closer to finding the cause of Legionnaire's disease.
There is a possibility that we may never find the answer. However, I will pledge, and I'm sure Dr. Sensor would, that this effort and investigation will continue if it takes a year or 2 years to continue the investigation to get to the bottom of it.
Over the Christmas holidays, some of the CDC staff decided to take some much-needed time off. They had been working around the clock to find the cause of the Legionnaires' outbreak without success. There were no new cases of Legionnaires' disease, but still no answers. Dr. Joseph McDade, a CDC microbiologist, and his wife were looking forward to the Christmas holidays.
Joe, it's been 6 months since this first broke out.
But what should have been a diversion turned to frustration as friends asked why he and his colleagues were unable to find the cause of the outbreak.
Come on, honey. I think
Frustrated, angry, and embarrassed, McDade canceled his Christmas vacation and returned to his lab. He pulled the slide of a guinea pig which had been injected with liver tissue from a Legionnaire's victim. It was a slide he had seen hundreds of times before. But this time, in his deserted lab, he noticed something he didn't recognize. A new bacterium, one Dr. McDade had never seen before. Dr. Joseph McDade, a CDC microbiologist, saw something he never noticed before as he examined tissues of guinea pigs exposed to the mysterious disease. But at first, he thought he was looking at a contaminated specimen.
So they were probably some other kind of bacteria. And he, as I understand it, decided to retest those specimens, no longer assuming that these were contaminants, but on the off chance that this was the agent.
He tested his newfound organism with a blood sample from a Legionnaire's disease survivor. That blood sample would contain antibodies which successfully fought the disease. If the antibodies were present, the sample would turn green. McDade looked through the microscope and saw a bright green glow.
So he demonstrated that the bug was present in the liver of the guinea pig, and he demonstrated that Legionnaires developed antibodies that were specific to that agent. Well, that was the breakthrough.
147 days after the outbreak, the bacterium which killed 34 and hospitalized 221 others was officially given its name, Legionella pneumophila, in honor of the Legionnaires in Philadelphia. And researchers identified an antibiotic which would kill it, erythromycin. But the question remained, where did the bacteria come from, and how was it spread? By the time researchers knew what they were looking for, they couldn't find it in any of the samples from the hotel. The bacteria had long since died. But researchers quickly discovered its properties. It multiplied in warm, watery conditions and could travel through the air in contaminated water droplets or mist. Since some of the victims never set foot inside the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, but were on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, Dr. Frazier believes that the bacteria most likely came from the roof of the hotel, from the air conditioning water cooling towers. Inside the cooling towers, warm water is cooled as it cascades over wooden louvers. The excess water falls into a collection pan at the bottom, where it stagnates if it fails to drain properly. Investigators believe it was here, inside these water cooling units, where the deadly Legionella bacteria grew and multiplied. It was drawn up into the air by the unit's powerful fans. Now airborne, the deadly mist of bacteria and warm water flew up into the atmosphere and floated down the side of the building, making its way to the street below. It landed on pedestrians walking by the hotel and was also drawn into the hotel lobby by intake fans on the south side of the building. Hotel employees probably developed an immunity to the bacteria or weren't susceptible because they were younger and healthier than those who contracted the disease. The cooling tower theory was never proven, probably because the bacteria in the Bellevue Stratford's cooling towers had already died. But investigators discovered the same bacteria in similar cooling towers in other parts of the country. Scientists believe Legionella has been killing for thousands of years. And when blood samples from earlier unexplained outbreaks were examined, they discovered the Legionella bacteria. Austin, Minnesota, 1957, the earliest documented outbreak. Washington, D.C., 1965, where Legionella killed 16 people. Bob McGarry and Charlie Davis were two of the more fortunate Legionnaires from the 1976 convention. Charlie Davis developed Legionnaires' disease, spent 3 weeks in the hospital, but recovered. Bob McGarry escaped the disease altogether, even though he and Charlie roomed together. Bob was younger, didn't smoke, or have any previous respiratory ailments. But the outbreak had a lasting effect on these two lifelong friends. They lost many of their brothers that summer, and neither one ever attended another Legionnaires' convention.
I was at the wrong place at the right time, as far as that was concerned.
Had it not been for the unfortunate incident that occurred with the rest of the delegates and brothers, I could say today it was a great time, but I was not going to press my luck. I seen it once, I don't want to do it again.
On the night of May 22, 1992, Betty Wilson returned home immediately after her Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. She had some last-minute packing to do for a vacation she was taking the next day with her husband. As she walked up the stairs, headed for her bedroom, she found her husband lying in a pool of blood. Clearly, Jack Wilson had been murdered, but how? Experts couldn't agree.
I went up the steps, and as I rounded the top of the stairs, with my head down and looking up to turn on the light, I saw Jack lying in the floor.
Betty Wilson immediately ran to a neighbor's house and called 911.
Listen, this is the police department. Talk to me, okay? Were you in the house or did you walk in the house? Okay, you come home and you walk in the house and you saw this person laying on the floor. Who is the person to you? Okay, do you know if the person that hurt him is still inside?
I don't know. I got the fright.
Okay. Now you just go stand there and you don't go back to your house, okay? And we've got an ambulance and we've got the police on the way.
The Huntsville, Alabama police arrived at the murder scene within minutes of the call.
Lying in the hallway was a white male who appeared to have been beaten and also stabbed. He was laying in a puddle of blood there in the hallway.
Lying next to the body, the apparent murder weapon, a 34-inch long metal baseball bat covered with blood. But police couldn't locate the weapon used to stab him. In Jack Wilson's bedroom, the telephone line had been cut, and a green ski mask was found on top of the bed. They also found an open pistol box with ammunition, but no sign of the gun. There were no indications the Wilson home had been explored for valuables. No drawers had been emptied, no closet searched. Jack Wilson's wallet was on the floor near his shoes. There was no cash inside, but his credit cards were. If the motive wasn't burglary, why was Jack Wilson murdered? Wilson was a 55-year-old eye doctor, very successful, well-known, and well-loved in the community.
I'd even hate to estimate how many people that Jack treated absolutely free because they needed medical help and they couldn't afford to pay.
Jack and Betty Wilson had been married for about 14 years. Each had 3 children from previous marriages.
We were happy and satisfied with each other. He met every need that I or my children or my grandchildren had. He was a wonderful person.
He was sincere, he was honest, straightforward. He was fun to be with.
As police began searching for clues, homicide detectives learned a shocking piece of information. The county sheriff's office had received a tip just the day before An informant in the small town of Vincent, Alabama, said she overheard a conversation that a man from Vincent had been hired to kill a doctor. That information led police on a long, convoluted journey from the backwoods of Alabama to one of its finest neighborhoods. It ended in a bitter courtroom dispute because of two conflicting interpretations of what happened during Jack Wilson's last moments alive. The body of Jack Wilson was transported to the state medical examiner in Birmingham for a routine autopsy. Dr. Joseph Embry noted a series of lacerations on Wilson's head and a fractured skull. Wilson had also suffered a fractured hyoid bone in his neck and a fractured right shoulder with a puncture wound clearly visible. Both arms were fractured. These were defensive-type wounds, indicating Wilson tried to fend off his attacker, and there were 2 stab wounds in his abdomen. Officially, the cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma to the head. The Huntsville Police Serology Lab identified the blood found on the bat to be the same blood type as Jack Wilson, but they didn't find any fingerprints. Next, police turned to the information they received before the murder.
We had a concerned citizen in the county that overheard a conversation that Mr. White had stated that he was going to Huntsville over the weekend to kill someone.
Huntsville police drove to Vincent, Alabama, about 100 miles away, to interview James White. He lived in a trailer on the outskirts of town. James White was a handyman at the Vincent Elementary School where his children attended classes. Betty Wilson's twin sister, Peggy Lowe, taught first grade at the same school. White had a past criminal record, a history of drug and alcohol abuse, and a dishonorable discharge from the military. Police interrogated White for 10 hours, and he admitted being inside the Wilson home the night of the murder.
Been drinking for the last 3 or 4 days, popping pills, drinking, smoking dope. And all I knew is I wanted to get away. They say the man got beat with a baseball bat, but I don't remember a baseball bat being around nowhere. But I do remember that I hit the man, he turned me loose.
Before police returned to Huntsville, they searched White's trailer. They found a pair of shoes with a blood stain, which later matched Jack Wilson's blood type. In the abandoned house next door, police discovered a revolver, which was registered to Betty Wilson. And in James White's truck, a book of poetry from the Huntsville Public Library, which had been signed out by Betty Wilson. Police arrested James White and charged him in the murder of Jack Wilson. Then, a shocking disclosure. James White told police that Betty Wilson and her twin sister Peggy Lowe had hired him to kill Jack Wilson for $5,000. Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe were immediately picked up for questioning.
The police came, they jerked me around. They jerked my watch off of my arm and threw it across the room, saying, "You won't need this where you're going."
As police looked for a motive, rumors surfaced about the unconventional relationship between Jack and Betty Wilson. They lived separate lives with separate bedrooms and not much of a sexual relationship. Betty admitted to police she had a number of affairs while married to Jack. Jack Wilson suffered from Crohn's disease and wore an ostomy bag, which Betty admitted to friends she found repulsive. And in the mind of police, perhaps the strongest motive of all, Betty Wilson would receive the bulk of her husband's $6 million estate. The star witness, James White, without whom there was no case against the sisters, cut a deal with the prosecution, and he even had it in writing. He would implicate Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe in return for a reduced sentence. The sisters were tried separately. Betty Wilson went on trial first. According to James White's testimony and the prosecution's interpretation of the autopsy findings, James White entered the Wilsons' home and waited in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Jack Wilson arrived home around 5 p.m., and neighbors saw him step out to the front yard to hammer a campaign poster into the lawn with a baseball bat. He then walked back inside the house and headed upstairs to his bedroom. White says he changed his mind and decided not to murder Wilson, but as he was leaving, encountered him in the hallway. The two struggled. White grabbed the baseball bat and struck Wilson in the head. He was then stabbed twice in the abdomen. White said Betty Wilson met him outside and drove him to his truck. However, police forensic experts found no evidence of White's hair, clothing fibers, or even a fingerprint inside Betty Wilson's car. Lacking any strong physical evidence, the prosecution attacked Betty Wilson's character, and they subpoenaed one of her ex-lovers to testify about their adulterous relationship. The jury found Betty Wilson guilty of capital murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole.
I think Miss Wilson was convicted on her personal conduct. She couldn't have been convicted on the evidence. I mean, the physical evidence was not there to support it.
The prosecution's next task, to try Betty's twin sister, Peggy Lowe, for the same crime. All of the witnesses and evidence against her would be similar, but what they hadn't bargained for was the testimony of a defense expert who would drop a forensic bombshell. That Jack Wilson was not murdered in the way the prosecution said. 8 months after Betty Wilson was convicted of murder for hire, her twin sister, Peggy Lowe, went on trial for the same crime. This time, the prosecution couldn't attack the defendant's lifestyle. Peggy Lowe was a first-grade school teacher. She and her husband were active in the local church, and she was even the lead singer with the church choir. She had a long history of helping those in need.
My friends did for me what I couldn't do for myself. When I could no longer cry, they cried for me. When I couldn't pray, they prayed for me.
Peggy Lowe's attorneys had time to look for new evidence and to go over the testimony from her sister's trial. One of the things they noticed was that James White never admitted killing Jack Wilson.
The detectives told me that I hit him with a baseball bat or I had to hit him with something other heavy. And I think I told them that I kept reaching until I got something other and I hit the man and he turned me loose and I left.
That was just one of the things that bothered Peggy Lowe's defense team. The other was the crime scene.
How could this man beat this man so badly with a baseball bat that he broke his arms and stabbed him and beat his head terribly, and there not be any blood splatter patterns?
The defense took the autopsy report and crime scene photos to Georgia and showed them to Atlanta's deputy medical examiner.
And if someone is being struck with a blunt instrument to cause lacerations like this, there's going to be a spray of blood that is not only sprayed when the instrument strikes the head or strikes the arm, but also as the instrument is raised back, there's going to be a sprayed pattern that will go upwards onto the wall or onto the ceiling. And I was really struck by the fact that I could not really ascertain any significant spray pattern at all.
Dr. Sperry agreed to testify at Peggy Lowe's trial. James White, once again, told his story. But this time, he was severely challenged by the defense.
The whole case rested on a man's testimony. The man is a liar, a child molester, shot his own men in Vietnam. He's been on psychedelic drugs. He's a drunk. He's a dope addict. He's a cocaine user.
The other strong defense challenge came against the state medical examiner who did the autopsy.
The story that the murderer told didn't make sense. Not only did they not make practical sense, they didn't make scientific sense. And I believe that juries like scientific evidence.
But the most startling testimony was that of Dr. Chris Sperry.
When a blunt instrument of any sort is used to strike the head repeatedly, it is very, very common. In fact, with repeated blows, almost always you will have not only transfer of blood from the lacerations onto the instrument, but hair as well. And finding hair embedded in blood that's on the surface of the blunt instrument, such as the bat, would be very, very significant.
There was no hair that I know of that was found on the bat. Parts of skull, I don't know of any, but all they did was the blood typing on the bat.
But Dr. Sperry went even further, saying he doubted that the bat was the murder weapon at all. And James White never admitted using the bat.
Looking at the injuries that Dr. Wilson had, I felt that the injury pattern, that is the lacerations and the fractures beneath these lacerations, were not of the type that would typically be caused by a baseball bat. Baseball bats cause crushing injuries of the head and will actually crush in the bones of the skull, just like an egg is being crushed.
The linear patterns of the wounds to Dr. Wilson's scalp led Dr. Sperry to conclude that it was more likely a fireplace poker that was used on Jack Wilson. This would also explain the puncture wound found on Dr. Wilson's shoulder.
This was rather unusual in and of itself, and no one really had an explanation for that particular injury. But when you think about a fireplace poker, that many of them are designed with a sort of a hook or a point that sticks out at a 90-degree angle, suddenly that also made sense, and it fit together with the whole pattern.
The autopsy report indicated that Dr. Wilson's hyoid bone had been fractured. Sperry believed Wilson had also been strangled.
It didn't make a damn how Dr. Wilson got killed. The question was, who did it? And James White admitted to doing it, whether he stomped him, beat him with a bat, beat him with a stick. But that's the type of bull that experts try and sell to juries.
He had a theory that there was 2 to 3 people that brought the body back to the scene and dumped it there on the scene, which was utterly, to me, ridiculous.
What killed Dr. Wilson was not the issue. The issue was, did Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe conspire with James White to kill Jack Wilson? And Sperry brings in this photograph of something that happened in a book and shows the jury and says, oh, it couldn't have been a bat. What difference does it make? Dr. Wilson was beaten to death.
But to convict Peggy Lowe, the jury would have to believe James White. And if Dr. Sperry was correct, the murder didn't happen the way James White said. There were now 2 scenarios as to how Jack Wilson was murdered. Neighbors saw him on the front lawn around 5 p.m., hammering the political poster into the ground with a baseball bat. Using Dr. Sperry's interpretation, he was then attacked by at least 2 individuals. During the struggle, Wilson's hyoid bone was fractured. He was struck at least 9 times in the head and at least once in the shoulder, creating the puncture wound in the back of his neck. Then stabbed twice in the abdomen. The body was then placed in a tarp and carried into the house, dropped onto the wooden floor, and then turned 180 degrees. His head brushed against the doorway molding, leaving a blood stain and the swirling blood pattern on the floor. They smeared blood onto the bat so it would look like the murder weapon, took the fireplace poker and knife, and fled. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you arrived at the verdict? Yes, sir. Would you read the verdict for me, please?
With the jury, found the defendant not guilty.
It was such a relief. I cried so hard people thought that she had gotten a guilty verdict, that they were tears of joy and relief.
But how could Doctors Sperry and Embry come to such different conclusions? We asked 2 board-certified forensic pathologists to review the autopsy report as well as the crime scene photographs. They both agreed the autopsy Dr. Embry performed was flawless. It just wasn't enough. Forensic science begins at the crime scene, and the fact the police and the prosecution never showed Dr. Embry the bat or the crime scene photographs until just a few days before the first trial was a serious mistake. Both experts suggested that a thorough forensic examination of the crime scene might have revealed the cause of the puncture wound on Wilson's shoulder, but the 2 experts disagreed about the bat. One was bothered by the lack of Jack Wilson's hair on it. The other wasn't. Dr. Walter Hoffman feels the lack of a thorough forensic crime scene examination opened the door for the defense.
If the law enforcement agency doesn't ask for help and does it all on its own and then ships the body in for autopsy, a certain vital amount of information has been lost. You lose the ability to really evaluate the scene as it is found in the virginal state before anyone has walked around it and done anything with it.
Dr. Embry, who performed the autopsy on Jack Wilson, didn't visit the crime scene. Although Dr. Embry continues to stand by his findings, he declined the opportunity to defend those findings for this program. After Peggy Lowe's acquittal, James White recanted his confession. In a signed affidavit, he said he never met or even spoke with Betty Wilson, that he was never propositioned by Peggy Lowe to murder Dr. Jack Wilson, and that he made it all up. But he now says he was coerced into signing that statement and has gone back to his original version. He remains in an Alabama prison, eligible for parole in just a few years.
I pleaded guilty to the case, but I didn't kill the man, but I knew about the situation. So in a sense, I felt like that I'm here for the right reason.
James Denison White would have sold his soul to get a good deal and avoid the electric chair. I believe that's exactly what he did.
2 sisters, 2 trials, the same forensic evidence, yet 2 different verdicts. Betty Wilson has been in prison for the last 4 years, serving a life sentence with no chance of parole. Her first appeal was turned down. Another is pending. Peggy Lowe hopes for the day her sister will get a new trial.
There's nobody there who cares anything about her. There's nobody to put their arms around her. There's nowhere for her to cry. There's no privacy. And the more things like that I realize, the more pain I feel for her.
It was a nightmare and it hasn't ended yet. I don't know that it'll ever end. Not for me, not for my children, for my precious grandchildren or my mother. It'll never end. Never.
There was a sentence buried inside a forgotten police report that nobody had read for 24 years. 5 words. Check the red toolbox. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. No follow-up. For 2 decades, the paper remained trapped inside a dusty archive room in Columbus, Ohio, surrounded by thousands of unsolved files that nobody expected to reopen. Until one rainy morning, everything changed. Because on that day, an evidence clerk accidentally dropped an old cardboard box onto the floor. Hundreds of yellowing documents scattered everywhere. Coffee stains, old photographs, broken paper clips. Then one sheet slid underneath a cabinet. The clerk bent down to retrieve it, and there it was. Those 5 words. Check the red toolbox. Nobody knew it yet, but that single sentence was about to expose a lie that had lived quietly inside Ohio for nearly 25 years. The story began on November 14th, 2001, a cold Wednesday night. The town of Ashford, Ohio, population barely 20,000, was preparing for winter. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Neighbors waved to each other. Stores closed at 8 p.m. Children finished homework. Dogs barked behind fences. Everything looked ordinary until 9:17 p.m. 28-year-old Sarah Whitmore vanished. No scream, No witnesses. No signs of a struggle. Just gone. Her car remained parked outside her home. Her purse sat on the kitchen table. Her television was still on. A cup of tea remained half full. Steam still rose from the surface when police arrived. She had disappeared less than 10 minutes earlier. The community panicked immediately. Sarah wasn't someone who disappeared. She was predictable, reliable, loved, a second-grade teacher, never missed work, never ignored family, never traveled unexpectedly. Yet she had vanished into thin air. Police searched everywhere. Fields, forests, roads, lakes. Nothing. Then detectives discovered something strange. Her front door was unlocked. Inside the house, everything remained untouched, except one object. A single photograph lay upside down on the living room floor. It showed Sarah standing beside 4 people. Her husband, her younger brother, her father, and an unknown man. Nobody recognized him. The face was partially obscured. Yet someone had circled him with black ink. Police asked Sarah's husband. He didn't know him. The brother didn't know him. Even Sarah's father had never seen him before. The investigation stalled immediately. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The town transformed. Fear spread everywhere. People locked their doors. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. Rumors exploded. A serial predator. A kidnapping ring. A secret affair. Every theory surfaced. Every theory collapsed. Then, 3 months later, another clue appeared. An anonymous letter arrived at the police station. Inside sat one sentence. She found something she wasn't supposed to find. No fingerprints. No DNA. Nothing. The case exploded again. What had she found? Nobody knew. Investigators searched her entire life. Bank records. Computer files. Emails. Phone logs. Nothing. Then they discovered another bizarre detail. 2 weeks before disappearing, Sarah had visited an abandoned storage facility on the outskirts town. Nobody knew why. Security cameras were too old. No footage remained. Yet multiple witnesses remembered seeing her there. Police searched every unit. Nothing. Case closed. Dead end. Years passed. Then another strange event occurred. In 2006, Sarah's father died unexpectedly. Natural causes. Case unrelated. Or so everyone thought. Inside his garage, officers discovered a red toolbox. Nobody opened it. Nobody cared. It was cataloged, stored, forgotten for 20 years. Until now, back in the present day, Detective Marcus Hale stared at the old note, checked the red toolbox. Hale was 48 years old, a veteran investigator, known for solving impossible cases. He opened the evidence file. The toolbox was still there, locked, untouched. Dust covered every inch. The key was missing, so they forced it open. The room fell silent. Inside were hundreds of cassette tapes, dozens of photographs, maps, and a notebook. Every page contained the same name, Sarah Whitmore. Again, again, again. 23 years of entries. Someone had been tracking her. Then Hale opened the first page. Date, Sarah was 16. Impossible. Someone had watched her for 12 years before she vanished. Then another page. She is beginning to ask questions. Another. She remembers more than expected. Hale froze. Remembers what? Then another entry. October 2001. She found the records. His pulse accelerated. Records? What records? Then he discovered a hidden envelope. Inside sat a photograph. A group of men standing in front of Ashford Town Hall. 5 men. One face instantly caught Hale's attention. The unknown man from Sarah's photograph. Then another shock. One of the men was Ashford's former mayor. Another was a retired sheriff. Another was Sarah's own father. The room became silent. This was bigger than a disappearance. Much bigger. Then Hale noticed something terrifying. Every single man in the photograph was dead, except one. The unknown man. Still unidentified. Still alive. Somewhere. Then another clue emerged. At the back of the notebook was a list. 27 names. Most crossed out. Sarah's name sat at the bottom, circled in red. Then Hale found a final sentence. She knows what happened in 1987, 14 years before she disappeared. The room went cold, because nobody had ever investigated anything significant in Ashford in 1987. Or at least, that's what official records said. Then Hale searched local archives. Nothing. Almost nothing. One newspaper article survived. Tiny. Hidden on page 11. 5 words stood out immediately. Teenager found dead near river. No name. No follow-up. No investigation. Nothing. As if someone wanted people to forget. Then Hale zoomed in on the image. The teenager looked familiar. His blood ran cold. It was Sarah, or someone who looked exactly like her. He stared for several seconds. Impossible. The date was 14 years before her disappearance. Then he noticed a caption. Not Sarah Whitmore. Emily Rhodes. Age 16. Dead. The resemblance was almost identical. The room became silent. Then Detective Hale whispered for words nobody would ever forget. Who was Sarah Whitmore? And suddenly, a missing person case from 2001 transformed into something far more terrifying. Because somewhere beneath 24 years of lies, somebody had erased an entire identity. Detective Marcus Hale did not sleep that night. The photograph of Emily Rhodes remained pinned to the center of the investigation board. 16 years old. Declared dead in 1987, yet her face was almost identical to Sarah Whitmore. Too identical. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same scar near the left eyebrow. Impossible. Hale kept comparing the images. Again, again, again. His instincts screamed the same thing. This wasn't coincidence. This was connection. Then another discovery arrived. Forensic analysts had enhanced the old newspaper image. The teenager near the river wasn't just similar to Sarah. She was wearing Sarah's necklace. A silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. The exact necklace Sarah had been wearing the day she disappeared in 2001. Hale froze. That necklace had been passed down from Sarah's grandmother. At least, that's what the family always said. Then another question surfaced. What if Sarah's family had lied? At 6:14 a.m., Hale drove to the Whitmore house. The property had remained empty for years. Sarah's husband, Daniel Whitmore, had moved to Cincinnati after the investigation stalled. The house sat untouched, almost preserved, like a museum. Dust covered every surface. Yet something felt wrong. The living room clock still worked. Tick, tick, tick. 24 years later. Still moving. Then Hale noticed a bookshelf. One section was cleaner than the others. Something had recently been removed. He searched carefully. A hidden compartment clicked open. Inside sat a VHS tape. No label. No date. He took it back to headquarters. The tape crackled to life. Static. Then a recording appeared. Sarah sat in front of a camera. The date displayed. November 12th, 2001. 2 days before she vanished. She looked terrified, exhausted. She kept glancing behind her. Then she spoke. If you're watching this, something happened to me. The room fell silent. She continued. My name isn't Sarah Whitmore. Every detective froze. Then she swallowed hard. I don't know who I am. The video stopped. Nobody spoke. Then Hale replayed it. Again, again, again. Every word felt heavier. Then another segment began. Sarah held up a photograph. Emily Rhodes, the girl from 1987. Then Sarah whispered, she looks exactly like me. Pause, because I think she is me. The tape glitched, then ended. The room exploded into chaos. Impossible. Emily Rhodes died 14 years before Sarah disappeared. Unless she never died. Hale immediately ordered exhumation records. Emily's grave was empty. No body. No remains. Nothing. An entire town had buried an empty coffin. Then things became stranger. The death certificate was forged. The coroner's signature was fake. Even the police report was missing pages. Someone had erased the truth. Then Hale discovered another shocking fact. The officer who signed the original report was Ashford's former sheriff, the same man from a photograph in the red toolbox, dead since 2014. Then another file surfaced, a witness statement that had never been submitted. A teenage boy named Andrew Keller. Statement date, October 1987. I saw a black truck take her. No follow-up, no investigation, nothing. Andrew Keller had vanished 1 year later, still missing. The room became silent again. This wasn't one disappearance. This was a pattern. Then analysts examined all 27 names inside the notebook. Every person had one thing in common. They either disappeared, died unexpectedly, or changed identities. 27 people, over 20 years. Then Hale circled another name. Rebecca Mason, alive, age 58, Ashford resident, still living there, the only surviving person on the list. He drove there immediately. Rebecca lived alone, a small white house, 3 locks on every door, curtains permanently closed. She opened the door before Hale knocked, as if she expected him. Then she said something that sent chills through his body. You open the toolbox. Hale froze. How do you know about it? Rebecca smiled nervously. Because we were all afraid of that day. The room became silent. She invited him inside. Her hand shook constantly. She looked exhausted, like someone who had spent decades running from a memory. Then she whispered. They finally found Sarah. Halefronit. Sarah disappeared in 2001. Rebecca shook her head. No. Another pause. Sarah disappeared in 1987. His pulse exploded. Then she pointed to an old photograph on the wall. 3 girls stood together. Emily Rhodes, Rebecca, and Sarah. Date, summer, 1987. Impossible. Sarah would have been 14 years old. But she wasn't. She was 16, the same age as Emily. The room spun. Then Hale noticed something worse. Sarah and Emily never appeared in the same picture. Not once. Rebecca looked at him, then quietly said 6 words. They were never 2 people. Silence. Hale sat frozen. Rebecca continued. Emily Rhodes became Sarah Whitmore. His blood ran cold. Someone had created a new identity. Then Hale asked the obvious question. Why? Rebecca burst into tears. Because Emily saw the murder. The room went silent. Another murder. Another hidden secret. Then Rebecca looked toward the window. They couldn't let her talk. Hale leaned forward. Who couldn't? Rebecca whispered. The council. Halefronit. The what? She exhaled slowly. A group of powerful men who controlled Ashford. The mayor, the sheriff, business owners, local judges, people nobody questioned. Then another sentence. They protected each other. The room felt colder. Rebecca stood up, walked toward a closet, pulled out a dusty box. Inside sat dozens of letters. Every single one addressed to Sarah. None were mailed. Then Hale opened one. Date, Dear Emily, remember your new name. Another, do not tell anyone about the river. Another, you are Sarah now. His hands trembled. They had rewritten her life. Then another letter. If you remember, you will disappear again. The room fell silent. Then Rebecca whispered something even worse. They did it to more than one child. Hale looked at the notebook again. 27 names. 27 victims. Then his phone rang. Forensic analysts had discovered fingerprints inside the red toolbox. One match returned immediately. Daniel Whitmore, Sarah's husband. The room went silent, because Daniel had always claimed he had never seen the toolbox before. He had lied. Then another discovery arrived. Daniel Whitmore wasn't his original name either. His birth record began in 1988. No hospital, no birth certificate, no parents, nothing before that year. A manufactured identity, just like Sarah. Hale's pulse accelerated. The entire marriage had been built on false identities. Then security footage from a gas station surfaced. recorded only 3 days earlier. Daniel Whitmore was back in Ashford, 24 years after Sarah vanished. Then the footage showed something else. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was the unknown man from the photograph. Older, gray hair, still alive, the final surviving member of the group. Then the man looked directly into the camera, as if he knew someone would eventually see it, and he mouthed 5 words. "You're too late, detective." The footage ended. Nobody in the room spoke, because somewhere in Ohio, after 24 years of silence, the last man connected to Sarah Whitmore was no longer hiding. He was waiting, and whatever happened in 1987 had never truly ended. By sunrise, the Ashford investigation had transformed from a forgotten missing person case into one of the largest criminal inquiries Ohio had seen in decades. 24 years of lies, 27 victims, multiple false identities, an entire town hiding something. Detective Marcus Hale stood in front of the investigation board. At the center were 3 names: Emily Rhodes, Sarah Whitmore, Daniel Whitmore. 1 person dead, 1 person missing, 1 person living under a false identity. Or so everyone believed. Then Hale circled another name: the unknown man, the last surviving member of the group. Nobody knew his identity, yet somehow he had remained invisible for nearly 40 years. Then another report arrived. Facial recognition had finally returned a match. The room fell silent. His name was Richard Vance. Age 74, former attorney, retired in 1998. Officially, he had no criminal history, but unofficially, his name appeared inside dozens of sealed documents connected to Ashford: property transfers, closed investigations, juvenile records, missing files. Every trail led back to him. Then Hale discovered something worse. Richard Vance had represented every member of the so-called council: the mayor, the sheriff, business owners, even Sarah's father. He was the man who cleaned up every mess, the man who buried every secret. Then Hale received another call. Daniel Whitmore's car had been found abandoned 30 miles outside Ashford. He drove there immediately. The vehicle sat beside an old grain warehouse. Engine cold, doors unlocked, nobody inside. Then officers discovered a fresh footprint leading toward the building. Hale entered cautiously. The warehouse looked empty. Then he noticed lights underground, a hidden staircase. His pulse accelerated. The team descended and froze. The walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds, no, thousands. Children, teenagers, adults. Every person had 2 names written beneath their faces. 1 crossed out, 1 active. Replacement identities. The room became silent. Then Hale saw Sarah, or Emily. Underneath her picture were 3 names: Emily Rhodes, Sarah Whitmore. Unknown. Unknown? There was another identity nobody knew about. Then Hale found a notebook. The handwriting belonged to Richard Vance. He opened the first page. Memory fades. Documents don't. Another page. Never let them remember the river. Then another. The children must be reassigned. Hale Froze. Children. Plural. Then he noticed another terrifying pattern. 27 victims. 27 children. Each one assigned a new identity. This wasn't about hiding a witness anymore. It was an entire system. Then he heard footsteps. Somewhere upstairs. Officers rushed out. Too late. A black sedan sped away. Richard Vance. Hale caught a glimpse. Gray hair. Blue jacket. The same man from the photographs. The same man who had mouthed 5 words into the gas station camera. "You're too late, detective." Then another discovery arrived from forensic analysts. Inside the warehouse, they found an audio recorder, still functional. Hale pressed play. Richard's voice emerged. Older, calm, no secret survives forever. Pause. Eventually, someone remembers. Then another voice. Sarah. No. Emily. Terrified. What happened at the river? Richard answered immediately. You saw something. Emily whispered. What? Silence. Then Richard replied, "Us." The recording stopped. The room went cold. Emily had witnessed them. All of them. Then another tape emerged. Date, October 1987. A child was crying. Then a man's voice said something chilling. "If she remembers our faces, we lose everything." Another voice answered. Then erase her life. The tape ended. Nobody spoke. Then Hale noticed something hidden inside the recorder. A tiny key. Attached was a tag. Locker 42, Ashford train station. He drove there immediately. The station was abandoned. No train stopped there anymore. Locker 42 still existed. The key fit. Inside sat a shoebox. Nothing else. Then Hale opened it. His heart stopped. 27 birth certificates. Every one fake. Every one connected to the names from the notebook. Then another shock. Sarah Whitmore's birth certificate was created in 1988, 1 year after Emily Rhodes supposedly died. Then Hale discovered another document, an adoption approval. The signatures. Sarah's father, the mayor, Richard Vance, the sheriff. They had created her. Then another file appeared. Operation Renewal. The room went silent. Operation Renewal. The purpose was written underneath. Protect the future of Ashford. Then Hale whispered, "Protected from what?" Nobody answered. Then analysts found another hidden page. Children who witness events will be reassigned. The room became silent again. This wasn't one victim. This was organized. Decades organized. Then another emergency call arrived. Rebecca Mason was missing. Her front door stood open. Her house had been emptied. No signs of struggle. Only one item remained. A photograph. Halle, circled in red ink. On the back were 6 words. Stop asking about the river. The room felt colder. This was no longer history. Someone was active, right now. Then Hale returned to the river. The place everyone avoided. The place no one discussed. The place that started everything. He searched for hours. Nothing. Then his flashlight reflected off metal, half buried in mud. A rusted lockbox. He pulled it out. Inside sat an old cassette tape. Date, September 1987. 1 month before everything changed. He pressed play. Children were laughing. Then Emily's voice. "Someone is coming." Footsteps. Then another voice. A man. Unknown. The laughter stopped. Then screaming. The tape ended abruptly. The room fell silent. Then forensic specialists cleaned the audio. One phrase emerged from the background. "Take them all." Take them all. Plural. Then another realization hit Hale. 27 names. 27 children. Something happened to all of them. Then his phone rang. A state analyst had uncovered something enormous. The 27 victims weren't born in Ashford. None of them. Every single child arrived from somewhere else. Different states. Different counties. Different histories. Someone had brought them there. Then reassigned them. Then Hale stared at the board. The mayor. The sheriff. Richard Vance. Sarah's father. They weren't protecting Ashford. They were building something. Then he whispered for words. What were they creating? Nobody had the answer. Then his computer screen flickered. A new video file had arrived. No sender. No email address. No metadata. He opened it. Richard Vance sat inside a dimly lit room. Alive. Calm. Looking directly at the camera. Then he said one sentence that sent chills through everyone in the room. Sarah Whitmore was never supposed to survive. The video ended. And somewhere beyond Ashford, after nearly 40 years of silence, the last man holding the truth was beginning to realize that his secrets were finally running out of places to hide. The room stayed silent long after the video ended. Nobody spoke. Only one sentence echoed inside Detective Marcus Hale's mind. Sarah Whitmore was never supposed to survive. Not disappear. Not run away. Not leave town. Survive. The wording changed everything. Because it meant Sarah had been marked for death long, before 2001. Then Hale replayed the footage. Again, again, again. Richard Vance showed no emotion, no fear, no panic, almost as if he had expected this day to come. Then another detail caught Hale's attention. The room behind Richard. An old clock hung on the wall. The time displayed 8:42. The clock had a logo, Ashford Community Center. The building had been abandoned since 1999. Police units arrived within minutes. The building looked empty, dark, silent. Dust covered the windows. Then Hale noticed fresh tire tracks. Someone had been there recently. The team entered. Nothing. Then footsteps echoed upstairs. Everyone froze. The noise stopped immediately. They searched every room. Nothing. Then Hale found a hidden elevator. The doors were concealed behind a bookshelf. It descended underground. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Every officer froze. Rows of filing cabinets stretched across an enormous room. Thousands. Every cabinet labeled with years. And beyond, then another section. Child assignments. Hale pulled open a drawer. Inside sat hundreds of photographs. Children, each one attached to a profile. Original name. New name. Status. Then he saw Sarah. Original name, Emily Rhodes. New identity, Sarah Whitmore. Status, unstable. His pulse accelerated. Unstable? Then another page. Subject continues remembering original events. Another. Memory suppression, unsuccessful. Then another sentence. Elimination authorized if necessary. The room went silent. Sarah had been targeted. Then Hale saw another familiar name. Daniel Whitmore. Original identity unknown. Status, protector. Protector? What did that mean? Then another file explained. Protectors were assigned to watch survivors. Their mission, keep them calm, keep them unaware, keep them silent. Hale's blood ran cold. Daniel wasn't Sarah's husband. He was her handler. Then another shocking realization arrived. What if Daniel actually cared about her? What if somewhere along the way, he stopped following orders? Then Hale found a handwritten note. If Sarah remembers everything, run. Signed, Daniel. The room became silent. Daniel had turned against them. Then another alarm sounded. An officer shouted from another room. Hale, you need to see this. He rushed over. An entire wall map covered Ohio. Red pins marked locations. 27 towns. 27 children. This wasn't Ashford anymore. This was statewide. Then he noticed dates. Every 2 years, new children arrived. Then another sentence. Program expansion successful. Program, not operation. Program. This had been planned for decades. Then Hale discovered a lock safe. Inside sat a VHS tape. Date, October 18th, 1987. He inserted it. Static. Then an image appeared. 27 children stood in a room. Terrified, a man spoke. We are giving you a new beginning. Then another man. If you tell anyone what happened at the river, you disappear. The children cried. Then the camera zoomed toward Emily. She looked directly into the lens. Even at 16, she looked fearless. Then she said something that changed everything. You killed him. The room fell silent. Then someone rushed toward the camera. The tape cut. Mercer's pulse exploded. Killed him? Who? The room went dark for a moment as the tape stopped spinning. Then analysts restored hidden audio. A man's voice emerged. Weak. Panicked. We weren't supposed to push him. Then another voice. Richard Vance. Stop recording. The tape ended. Nobody spoke. Then Hale whispered. It wasn't one victim. The room froze. Everyone had been focused on Emily, focused on Sarah, focused on the children. But someone else had died. Someone nobody had ever investigated. Then forensic teams discovered another hidden compartment. Inside sat an old ledger. Every page contained financial records. Millions of dollars. Transferred over decades. Recipients. Mayor. Sheriff. Richard Vance. Sarah's father. Then another name appeared. Judge Harrison Cole. Alive. age 78, still living in Ashford, still working part-time. The last active member of the council. Hale immediately drove there. The judge sat alone on his porch, reading a newspaper, almost peaceful. He looked up before Hale even exited the car. Then he smiled sadly. You finally found it. Hale Froze. The judge folded the newspaper, then quietly said 6 words. It took longer than expected. No fear, no resistance. Then Hale asked, what happened in 1987? The old man's face changed instantly. Regret, deep regret. Then he answered, we made one mistake. Hale stared, what mistake? The judge swallowed hard. We underestimated the children. The room fell silent. Then he continued. They remembered everything. Hale sat down, then asked, who died at the river? The judge closed his eyes. Several seconds passed. Then he answered, a reporter. Hale's heart stopped. A reporter, not a child, not Sarah, not Emily. Someone investigating them. Then another sentence. He was going to expose us. Hale's pulse accelerated. Who killed him? The judge's hands began shaking. Then he whispered. No one intended to. The story spilled out. The reporter had gathered evidence. The counsel confronted him. An argument started. Someone pushed him. He hit his head on a rock. Dead instantly. 27 children witnessed everything. Panic erupted. The counsel made a decision. Erase the witnesses. Not by killing them. By erasing who they were. Hale sat frozen. 40 years. Thousands of lives. All because grown men were afraid of prison. Then the judge began crying. Every year I wanted to confess. Then another sentence. But Richard wouldn't let us. Hale leaned forward. Where's Richard now? The judge looked terrified. Then he answered. He's preparing to leave. Hale frowned. Leave where? The judge whispered. Nowhere. The room went silent. Then he said something that made Hale's blood run cold. He knows he's going to die. At that exact moment, Hale's phone buzzed. An emergency alert appeared. Human remains discovered beneath Ashford River Bridge. Estimated burial date, 24 years. Then another message arrived. DNA preliminary match. Daniel Whitmore. The room fell silent. Because the man everyone thought was running was already dead. And someone had buried him where everything first began. For several seconds, Detective Marcus Hale simply stared at the message on his phone. Human remains discovered beneath Ashford River Bridge. Preliminary DNA match, Daniel Whitmore. Nothing made sense anymore. Daniel Whitmore had been seen on security footage only days earlier. Alive, walking beside Richard Vance. Yet now forensic analysts were saying he had been dead for 24 years. Impossible. Either the body was misidentified, or someone else had been living as Daniel Whitmore all this time. Hale drove to the river immediately. The scene was already sealed off. Floodlights illuminated the muddy embankment. Forensic teams worked in silence. The remains had been discovered inside a rusted metal drum buried beneath several feet of dirt. A watch sat beside the skeleton. The engraving read, DW, Daniel Whitmore. Then another item emerged. A cassette recorder, still intact. Hale's pulse accelerated. He pressed play. Static filled the air. Then a man's voice emerged. Daniel, young, terrified. If you're hearing this, they found me. The room fell silent. He continued. My real name isn't Daniel Whitmore. Another lie. Another identity. Then he said something even worse. They replaced me too. Hale Froze. The tape continued. I was supposed to watch Sarah. Pause. Then I fell in love with her. The room became silent. Everything shifted instantly. Daniel had not been her handler anymore. He had become her protector. Then his voice trembled. She started remembering. Another pause. Richard knows. Then footsteps echoed in the background. Daniel whispered, They're here. The tape abruptly ended. Nobody spoke. Then Hale realized something horrifying. The remains couldn't belong to Daniel. because Daniel had recorded this after 2001. Someone had intentionally planted false evidence. Then another report arrived. DNA verification complete. The remains were not Daniel Whitmore. The remains belonged to an unidentified male, age 34, murdered in 2001. Then Hale remembered something. The reporter, the one who supposedly died in 1987. No, the ages didn't match. This was someone else. Then another item was recovered, a wallet. Inside was an identification card. The room fell silent. Name, Ethan Rhodes. Rhodes, the same surname as Emily. Hale's blood ran cold. He searched the archives immediately. Ethan Rhodes, age 34, brother of Emily Rhodes, declared missing in November 2001, 3 days after Sarah vanished. Nobody had ever connected the cases, because somebody had erased them too. Then Hale whispered 4 words. He was looking for her. Then another discovery emerged. Ethan had hired a private investigator weeks before he disappeared. The investigator was still alive. Name, Samuel Bennett. Age 67. Living in Toledo. Hale drove there immediately. Samuel opened the door, carrying a folder, as if he had been waiting 25 years for someone to arrive. Then he said something chilling. Richard finally lost. Hale sat down. Samuel handed him a box. Inside sat photographs, documents, maps. Then one image stopped him cold. 27 children standing beside a school bus. Date, Sarah, Rebecca, Daniel, all there. Then Hale froze. Daniel was one of the children. The room became silent. He wasn't assigned later. He had always been one of them. Then Samuel spoke. They all witnessed it. The reporter's death, the river, the cover-up, everything. Then Samuel pointed to another face. A boy, 11 years old. Then another, a girl, 12. Every child eventually received a new identity. Every child except one. Then Hale asked, "Who?" Samuel looked afraid. Then he answered, "Child 27. The room went silent. There was no name, only a blank silhouette. Then Samuel whispered, "No one ever found them." Hale frowned. "What happened?" Samuel swallowed hard. They escaped. The room felt colder. One child escaped the program. Then another discovery emerged. A newspaper clipping. Someone had anonymously sent evidence to federal investigators, but the investigation disappeared. The center signed with only one phrase, "Witness 27. Then Hale realized someone had been fighting back for years. Then his phone rang. Another emergency alert. Judge Harrison Cole was dead. Heart attack. Officers had just arrived. But something strange had been left behind. A note. Hale drove there immediately. The note contained 6 words. "The church knows everything now." The church? Hale frowned. Then Samuel whispered, "Oh no." Hale looked at him. "What?" Samuel's face turned pale. "They moved the records." "What records?" "The original ones." Then Hale understood. The false identities, the children, the murders, everything. There were original records somewhere, and they had been hidden inside the church all these years. St. Michael's Church sat at the edge of Ashford, one of the oldest buildings in town. Police units arrived. The priest stood outside, shaking, terrified. He said only one sentence. "I never opened the basement." Hale descended immediately. The smell hit him first. Dust, mold, paper. Then he saw them. Shelves. Hundreds of shelves. Every original identity. Every birth certificate. Every confession. Every lie. 40 years of secrets. Then his flashlight stopped on one box. Emily Rhodes. He opened it. Inside sat a letter. Addressed to Sarah. Date, November 13th, 2001. One day before she vanished. He read it slowly. "If you're reading this, you finally remembered." Then another sentence. "Trust nobody named Daniel." Hale froze. Impossible. Daniel had protected her. Hadn't he? Then he read further. "There are 2 Daniels. The room went silent. Hale's pulse exploded. 2 Daniels. Then another sentence. One of them is trying to save you. The other one is Richard's son. Everything spun. The security footage. The gas station. The man beside Richard. That wasn't Daniel Whitmore. It was someone pretending to be him. Then another revelation arrived. Richard Vance had a son. Official records showed no children. But hidden inside church documents was one name. Daniel Vance. Born 1978. Alive. Missing. Status. Unknown. Then Hale looked at the surveillance image again. Older. Gray beard. Different face. But the eyes matched. The man wasn't Daniel Whitmore. It was Daniel Vance, the son of Richard. And for 24 years, he had been walking around using someone else's identity. Then another page slipped out of the folder. A map. One location circled in red. An abandoned farmhouse 20 miles outside Ashford. At the bottom sat one handwritten sentence. He's waiting there. At that exact moment, Hale's phone buzzed again. An incoming message. No sender. No number. Only 7 words. Come alone if you want Sarah alive. Detective Marcus Hale stared at the message for several seconds. Come alone if you want Sarah alive. The room went silent. Every officer around him looked up. His pulse accelerated. Sarah alive? Impossible. 24 years had passed. The woman everyone believed had vanished without a trace in 2001 was now 52 years old. If she was alive, then everything they thought they knew was wrong. Again, Hale showed nobody the message. He simply grabbed his jacket, took the map from the church basement, and drove toward the abandoned farmhouse. Rain pounded the windshield. The roads grew narrower, the trees thicker. Then the farmhouse appeared. Dark, silent, completely isolated. One light glowed from inside. Hale exited the car alone. No backup, no sirens, no radio calls. The front door stood open, as if someone had been expecting him. He stepped inside. The house looked frozen in time. Furniture covered in white sheets. Dust everywhere. Then he heard music. A piano. Soft. Slow. Someone was playing. He followed the sound. At the end of a hallway sat an old man, Richard Vance, alive, calm, wearing a dark gray sweater. He continued playing for several more seconds before stopping. Then he looked up. No gun, detective? Hale didn't answer. Richard smiled. Good. Then he pointed toward a chair. Sit. Hale remained standing. Where's Sarah? Each outside. Hale clenched his jaw. Then what's the right question? Richard stared directly at him. Who is Sarah? The room fell silent. Again, the same question. Again and again, the investigation kept returning to identity. Then Richard stood up. He looked exhausted, older than before, like a man who had been carrying secrets for too long. Then he spoke. Sarah Whitmore died in 2001. Hale froze. What? Richard nodded. She died 24 years ago. His blood ran cold. Then Richard continued. But Emily Rhodes didn't. The room became silent. Then Richard opened a hidden drawer. Inside sat dozens of photographs. One every year. A woman, older every year. Still alive. Emily. Then Hale whispered, Where is she? Richard looked away. Safe. The answer felt wrong. Then Richard sat down. For 40 years, people have misunderstood everything. Another pause. We weren't protecting ourselves. Hale frowned. Then who are you protecting? Richard swallowed hard. Her. The room went silent. Then Richard handed Hale another cassette tape. Date, November 14th, 2001. The night Sarah disappeared. Hale pressed play. Sarah's voice emerged. Calm. Steady. If this tape is playing, I left. Hale froze. She left? Then Sarah continued. They didn't take me. Another pause. I chose to disappear. The room became silent. Everything stopped. Then she continued. Because I finally remembered. Her voice shook. They'll never stop hunting me. Then another sentence. So I became someone else. The tape ended. Hale sat frozen. Sarah wasn't abducted. She escaped. Then Richard spoke. That's the secret. Hale looked at him. What secret? Each outside. The council died years ago. The room went silent. Then Richard whispered. The real danger didn't. Hale frowned. If not them, then who? Richard slowly answered. The children. The room became silent. Hale stared at him. What? Richard pointed toward the investigation board Hale had photographed earlier. 27 names. 27 children. Then he said something terrifying. They grew up. Hale's blood ran cold. Then Richard continued. Some forgave. Pause. Some didn't. Another pause. And some wanted revenge. The room fell silent. Then another folder appeared. Inside were newspaper clippings. Deaths, disappearances, accidents. Over 2 decades. Every victim was a former council member. Someone had been hunting them. Then Richard whispered, We created victims. Another pause. They created hunters. The room went silent. Then Hale asked, Who was killing them? Richard answered immediately, Witness 27. The room froze. The child who escaped. The only one never reassigned. Still alive. Still hunting. Then Richard handed him another photograph. Hale's blood turned cold instantly. The picture showed Witness 27 standing beside Sarah. Date. Then another photograph. Then another. Always together. Then Hale whispered, They've been working together. Richard nodded slowly. Then another sentence. Sarah has been hunting them for years. The room went silent. Then Hale asked, So why contact me now? Richard looked exhausted. Then he answered, Because she failed. Hale frowned. What failed? Richard leaned forward, then whispered, He's back. The room went cold. Hale's pulse accelerated. Who? Richard swallowed hard. My son, Daniel Vance. Alive. The man from the security footage. Then Richard continued. He wants to finish what we started. The room became silent. Then another folder appeared. Operation Renewal. Status. Reactivated. Date. 3 months ago. Someone was rebuilding the program. Then Hale's phone vibrated. A new alert. 3 people missing. Ashford teenagers. Age 16. The room froze. History was repeating itself. Then another message arrived. A photograph. 3 teenagers standing beside a school bus. Exactly like the image from 1987. At the bottom sat one sentence. A new beginning. Hale's blood turned to ice. Then Richard said something nobody expected. Kill me. The room went silent. Hale stared at him. What? Richard looked terrified. More terrified than anyone Hale had seen during this entire investigation. Then he whispered, If Daniel catches me, he'll use me. The room fell silent. Then another sentence. He believes the system worked. Hale's stomach dropped. Daniel Vance wanted to continue replacing identities, continue erasing children, continue building a new generation. Then suddenly every light inside the farmhouse went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then footsteps echoed upstairs. Slow, deliberate. Then a man's voice emerged. Older, calm, familiar. Hello, Father. The room went ice cold. Richard stopped breathing. Detective Hale slowly turned around. A silhouette stood in the doorway. Gray beard, dark coat, the man from the gas station, Daniel Vance. Then he smiled and said 6 words that made everyone's blood run cold. We get to start over again. The room became perfectly silent. Daniel Vance stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. No weapon visible. No fear. No urgency. Just a calm expression that somehow felt more dangerous than anger itself. Rain hammered against the windows. Thunder echoed in the distance. Then Daniel smiled. We've been waiting for you, Detective. Marcus Hales sollicite putbakir. Richard Vance looked terrified. Not nervous. Not worried. Terrified. As if he were looking at a ghost. Then Daniel walked inside. He looked older than the surveillance footage. 50 years old, gray beginning to spread through his beard, yet his eyes remained unsettlingly calm. Then he said something unexpected. "You're investigating the wrong crime." The room went silent. Hale stared at him. 27 children had their identities erased. Daniel nodded. "Yes." People disappeared. "Yes." People were murdered. "Yes." Then Daniel smiled again. "And yet, that's still not the real crime." Hale frowned. "What are you talking about?" Daniel walked toward the piano. Then he touched a photograph. "Sarah. Or Emily." Then he whispered. Fear made monsters out of everyone. The room stayed silent. Then Richard suddenly shouted, "Stop." Daniel looked at his father. "You should have confessed 40 years ago." Richard shook his head. "We were trying to protect them." Daniel laughed. "No." Then he said something chilling. "You were trying to protect yourselves." The room froze. Then Daniel looked at Hale. "Tell me, detective." Pause. "How many children today are forgotten?" Another pause. "How many disappear every year?" Hale didn't answer. Then Daniel continued. "The council discovered something ugly about humanity." The room became silent. "People only care after tragedy." He pointed at the old files. "Those 27 children were invisible before 1987. Another pause. "They became important only after they suffered." The room felt colder. Then Hale said, "So your solution is to repeat history?" Daniel smiled. "No." Then another sentence. "My solution is to rebuild it correctly." The room froze. Then another phone alert vibrated inside Hale's pocket. 3 teenagers still missing. Their last known location. An abandoned school. Outside Ashford. Daniel noticed the notification. Then he smiled. "You're already too late." Hale rushed toward the door. Then Daniel spoke. "They volunteered." Hale stopped instantly. "What?" Daniel nodded. "They chose this." Impossible. Then Daniel explained. The internet, social media, isolation, loneliness, teenagers desperate to become someone else. Then another sentence. "People have always wanted a second life." The room became silent. Then Hale realized something terrifying. Daniel wasn't kidnapping children. He was recruiting them. Then Richard whispered, "Oh, God." Daniel looked at his father. "They came willingly." The room froze. Then another folder appeared. Applications. Hundreds of them. Teenagers asking for new identities. New families. New lives. Some wanted to escape abuse. Some wanted to escape debt. Some simply wanted to disappear. Then Hale whispered, "You manipulated them." Daniel shrugged. "The world did that first." The room fell silent. Then Hale's phone rang. An unknown number. He answered. A woman's voice emerged. Older, calm, instantly familiar. Emily, or Sarah, alive. Marcus, Hale Froze. Where are you? She ignored the question. "You have 2 hours." His pulse accelerated. 2 hours for what? Then she whispered, "Before he activates it." The line disconnected. Hale looked at Daniel. "What are you activating?" Daniel smiled. Then he walked toward a bookshelf. He opened a hidden compartment. Inside sat dozens of servers. Modern equipment. Monitors. Digital files. Not paper. Not tapes. Technology. Then Hale understood. The program had evolved. No more hidden documents. No more forged certificates. Data. Digital identities. Daniel had rebuilt everything. Then another monitor illuminated. Thousands of names appeared. Teenagers. Adults. People all over Ohio. Waiting lists. Applications. Profiles. Then Hale's blood ran cold. The number kept rising. 7,000. 10,000. 12,000. This wasn't Ashford anymore. This was spreading. Then Daniel said something terrifying. The world doesn't need prisons. Pause. It needs escape routes. The room went silent. Then Richard shouted, "You're insane." Daniel laughed softly. "No." Then he pointed toward Hale. "Ask him." Halefronit. What? Daniel smiled. How many people wish they could start over? The room fell silent, because everyone knew the answer. Million. Then Daniel whispered, I simply built a system. Then another monitor flashed. A countdown. 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 14 seconds. Hale's pulse accelerated. What happens when it reaches 0? Daniel looked directly at him, then answered. The old identities disappear. The room froze. Then he continued. Permanently. Birth certificates, school records, medical histories, everything. Thousands of people would legally become someone else. Then Hale realized the scale. This wasn't identity fraud anymore. It was identity replacement on a national level. Then another message appeared on the screen. Phase 1, Ohio. There were more phases. Then Hale shouted, We're the teenagers. Daniel smiled. Where we all started. The river. The room fell silent. Then Hale sprinted outside. Police units were already arriving. Backup had finally traced his location. But Daniel didn't run. He simply stood inside the farmhouse, watching, smiling, as if he knew something nobody else did. Then Richard grabbed Hale's arm. Forget him. Hale turned. What? Richard looked terrified. Find Sarah. Then another sentence. She's the only one who can stop him. The room froze. Then Richard handed him a photograph. Recent. Taken only days earlier. Sarah, alive, standing beside a diner. Location stamped on the back. Cleveland. Then another handwritten message. She remembers everything now. At that exact moment. Every phone in Ohio buzzed simultaneously. An emergency alert. People all over the state began receiving the same text message. Only 4 words. Who do you want to become? And suddenly, a cold case that had begun with one missing woman in 2001 was no longer about the past. It was becoming the future. Within minutes, Ohio erupted into confusion. Millions of phones had received the same message. Who do you want to become? No sender. No website. No explanation. Then another message arrived. A link. People began clicking. Thousands at first. Then hundreds of thousands. By the time authorities reacted, it was already spreading across social media. A simple interface appeared. One question. If you could erase your life today, would you? Yes. No. The numbers climbed rapidly. 40,000, 90,000, 200,000. The room went silent inside the farmhouse. Daniel Vance simply watched the screen. Then he smiled. See. He looked at Detective Marcus Hale. People are volunteering. Hale's stomach tightened. This was no longer a criminal conspiracy. It was becoming a movement. Then another number appeared. 63% selected yes. Then 71. Then 78. Hale couldn't believe it. People want to escape. More than anyone had imagined. Then Daniel spoke quietly. Nobody is forcing them. Another pause. The world already did. Then Hale rushed toward his vehicle. The Cleveland photograph. Sarah, alive. If Richard was right, she was the only person capable of stopping this. He drove immediately. 2 hours. That was all he had. Meanwhile, emergency broadcasts interrupted every television station. Cybersecurity agencies scrambled. State police mobilized. Nobody understood what they were facing. Then another alert appeared. The website wasn't hosted in Ohio. It wasn't even inside the country. Thousands of servers. Hundreds of locations. Daniel had prepared for years. Then Hale arrived in Cleveland. The diner still existed. Small, quiet, rain falling outside. He entered. An elderly waitress looked up, then immediately asked, You're looking for Emily. Not Sarah. Emily. His pulse accelerated. Where is she? The waitress smiled sadly. She's upstairs. Hale Froze, as if she had been expecting him. Then he climbed the stairs. Room 14. The door stood open. Inside sat a woman, 52 years old. Gray strands mixed into dark hair. Calm eyes. Exhausted face. Sarah Whitmore. Emily Rhodes, alive for 24 years. She looked up, then smiled softly. Took you long enough. Hale sat down. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he finally asked, "Why disappear?" She stared out the window. Because everyone was hunting everyone. The room stayed silent. Then she continued. The council wanted silence. Another pause. The children wanted revenge. Another, and I wanted none of it. Then she looked directly at him. I ran. Simple. Human. After decades of theories, conspiracies, and myths, the answer was almost painfully ordinary. She ran. Then Hale asked, "Why come back now?" Emily exhaled slowly. Because Daniel misunderstood everything. The room went silent. Then she stood up, walked toward an old box. Inside sat dozens of letters. One for every year she had been gone. Addressed to nobody. Then she handed him one. He opened it. I almost returned today. Another. I want to tell the truth. Another. I'm still afraid. Then another. I can't run anymore. Hale looked at her. You've been watching all this happen? She nodded. Every year, every death, every disappearance, every victim. Then she whispered, "We never escaped 1987. The room fell silent. Then Hale asked a question that had haunted him since the beginning. Who was Witness 27? Emily looked at him, then smiled sadly. Me. His heart stopped. Impossible. Then she nodded. I escaped. The room went silent. Then another revelation. She wasn't both Sarah and Witness 27. She was Emily, Sarah, and Witness 27. 3 identities. 1 life. Then she explained. The council assigned her a new identity. She accepted it. Then in 2001, she disappeared again. Created another life. Another name. Another escape. Then another. Always running. Then Hale asked, "Why didn't you stop Daniel sooner?" Her face changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. Then she answered, "Because he was one of us." The room froze. Daniel wasn't a villain who appeared later. He was one of the children. Another victim. Then she continued, "He believes he's saving people." Another pause. That's what makes him dangerous. Then her phone buzzed. 1 message. The countdown. 58 minutes and 43 seconds. Less than an hour remained. Then another image appeared. The river. Dozens of teenagers standing there. The same scene from 1987. History repeating itself. Then Emily stood up immediately. "It's time." Hale frowned. "For what?" She looked directly at him. "To end Ashford." The room went silent. Then she grabbed another folder. Original evidence. Every confession. Every secret. Everything hidden for 40 years. Then Hale froze. There was one final document. The original reporter's notebook. The man who died in 1987. His name. Thomas Green. Then Hale discovered something shocking. The notebook's final entry. He read it aloud. The children are innocent. Another sentence. The adults are afraid. Then one final line. If someone reads this in the future, don't let fear become inheritance. The room fell silent. Emily smiled sadly. Nobody listened. Then both of them left immediately. Police convoys were already racing toward Ashford River. Helicopters filled the sky. Media crews arrived. Thousands of people watched online. Then Hale's phone buzzed again. A new message from Daniel. Only 6 words. This time, nobody gets forgotten. The countdown continued. 41 minutes and 17 seconds. The sky darkened. Rain intensified. And at the same riverbank where 40 years of lies first began, an entire generation was about to decide whether they want to keep their identities or become someone else forever. The rain poured harder as hundreds of police vehicles raced toward Ashford River. Helicopters circled overhead. News stations interrupted every program. The entire country was now watching a place that most Americans had never even heard of before. Ashford, Ohio. A town that had spent 40 years hiding secrets was suddenly at the center of a national crisis. Detective Marcus Hale drove alongside Emily Rhodes. For the first time, she was no longer Sarah Whitmore, no longer Witness 27, no longer a ghost, just Emily, a woman who had spent most of her life running. Then she suddenly said something unexpected. "It's my fault." Hale looked at her. "No." She shook her head. "Yes." The room inside the vehicle fell silent. Then she continued, "I should have told the truth years ago." Another pause. "Instead, I kept surviving." The words fell heavy, because surviving and living were not the same thing. Then Hale asked, "What exactly is Daniel planning?" Emily stared out the window, then answered, "He wants to erase pain." Hale frowned. "By replacing identities?" She nodded. Then another sentence. "He's trying to save the child he used to be." The room went silent. Then she explained. Daniel had never recovered from 1987. None of them had. But unlike the others, he reached a different conclusion. The world was broken. People suffered. Trauma lasted forever. So if people could become someone else, pain could disappear. That was his logic. Then Emily whispered, "He's trying to cure suffering." Another pause. "But he's creating another prison." Then Hale's radio exploded. "All units. More than 200 people have arrived at the river." His pulse accelerated. 200? Then another update. Most were teenagers. Some adults. Some entire families. People who had signed up online. People who wanted new lives. The movement was spreading faster than anyone expected. Then another update arrived. 30,000 new registrations statewide. Daniel wasn't just influencing victims anymore. He was influencing society. Then Hale saw the river ahead. Floodlights illuminated the entire area. The exact same place where everything began in 1987. But now something was different. A stage, large screens, generators, computers. Daniel had built an event. Thousands of people watched from a distance. Then Hale stepped out. Emily froze beside him. Her breathing changed. The memories were returning. Then she whispered. Nothing changed. The river still looked the same. The trees, the bridge, the water, the place where decades of fear were born. Then Daniel appeared, standing at the center, perfectly calm. Then he smiled. "You came." Hale walked forward. "So, did you?" Daniel nodded, then looked at Emily. "Hello, Sarah." She shook her head. "No." Then another sentence. "My name is Emily." The room became silent. The first time she had publicly reclaimed her identity. Daniel smiled sadly. "You're still afraid." Emily stared at him. "No." Another pause. "I'm finally tired." The room fell silent. Then Daniel looked around. Hundreds of people watched him, some curious, some hopeful, some desperate. Then he raised his voice. "How many of you want a second chance?" Hands went up immediately. Dozens. Then hundreds. Then more. Hale's stomach tightened. Then Daniel continued. "How many of you are tired of pain?" More hands. Then another sentence. "How many of you wish you could start over?" Almost everyone. The room became silent. Then Daniel looked toward Hale. "See." He smiled. "Nobody wants their old life." Then Emily stepped forward. "No." Daniel looked at her. Then she said something that stopped everyone. "They don't want another life." Pause. "They want help with the one they already have." The crowd grew quiet. Then she continued. "You don't heal pain by erasing people." Another pause. "You heal pain by facing it." Daniel's expression changed. For the first time. Anger. Then he whispered, "You sound just like them." Emily shook her head. "No." Another pause. "They ran from guilt." Then she pointed at him. "You're running from grief." The entire area fell silent. Then Daniel laughed nervously. "No." Emily walked closer. "Yes." Then she whispered, "You've been trying to save your younger self for 40 years. His smile vanished instantly. The room went silent. Then she said something devastating. and it didn't work. Daniel stood frozen. Then memories began surfacing. The river, the reporter, the fear, the children crying, everything. Then another sentence. We all suffered. Then another. But suffering is an identity. The room remained silent. Then suddenly one of the giant screens activated. A hidden video file began playing automatically. Nobody had touched anything. The footage was from 1987. The original reporter, Thomas Green, alive, standing by the river. He looked directly at the camera. Then he said one sentence that changed everything. If you're watching this, none of the children are guilty. The room froze. He continued. They're victims. Another sentence. If adults fail them, they'll spend their entire lives trying to become someone else. The crowd became silent. Then he smiled. If that happens, stop running. The video ended. Then Daniel looked around. People were crying. Teenagers lowered their phones. Parents embraced their children. Then Daniel whispered. No. His entire philosophy began collapsing. Then another emergency alert arrived. The countdown. 9 minutes and 31 seconds. 9 minutes remained. Daniel's servers were still active. If the process completed, thousands of digital identities would permanently overwrite existing records. Then Hale stepped forward. It's over. Daniel looked at him, then smiled sadly. No. Another pause. It isn't. Then he reached inside his coat. Everyone froze. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out an old photograph. 27 children. Then he whispered, We deserve better. The room went silent. Because for the first time, nobody disagreed. Then Daniel looked toward the river. Tears filled his eyes. And he quietly said 6 words nobody expected to hear. I don't know who I am anymore. Rain continued falling over Ashford River. Nobody spoke. Daniel Vance stood in silence, holding the old photograph of 27 children. For the first time since this entire investigation began, he no longer looked dangerous. He looked lost. The countdown continued. 8 minutes and 47 seconds. 8 minutes. Thousands of digital identities were seconds away from becoming permanent. Servers all over the country were still active. The system was still running. Then Detective Marcus Hale stepped closer. You can still stop this. Daniel stared at the photograph, then smiled weakly. Can I? The room remained silent. Then Emily walked toward him. Slowly. No anger. No hatred. Just exhaustion. Then she said something simple. We survived. Daniel looked at her. Then she added another sentence. We don't have to keep surviving forever. The words hit him immediately. His eyes filled with tears. Then another memory surfaced. 27 children standing beside the river. Cold. Terrified. Alone. Then another memory. Richard Vance, his father, whispering one sentence. Forget today ever happened. The room went silent. Then Daniel whispered, I couldn't. Emily nodded. Neither could we. Then she pointed around them. The difference is we stopped running. The countdown continued. 7 minutes and 22 seconds. Then Daniel looked toward the crowd. Teenagers, parents, families, people desperate for a new beginning. Then he finally understood. They weren't there because they wanted new identities. They were there because they wanted hope. Then he whispered, I gave him the wrong thing. The room remained silent. Then his phone buzzed. Another alert. System synchronization active. 92%. The process was almost complete. Then Daniel suddenly ran toward the control station. Everyone tensed. Police officers raised their weapons. Then Emily shouted, Wait! Daniel sat at the keyboard. His hands shook violently. Then he laughed. A nervous laugh. Then another. Then he whispered, I built it too well. The room went silent. There was no single off switch. He had decentralized everything. Thousands of servers. Hundreds of backups. Then Hale shouted, How do we stop it? Daniel stared at the screen. Then answered, We don't delete it. Hale frowned. What? Daniel looked at Emily, then smiled sadly. We replace it. The room went silent. Then he explained. The system relied on secrecy. It relied on hidden identities, false names, missing records. If the truth entered the database, the entire system would collapse. Then Hale understood. Don't hide the truth. Publish it. Everything. Then Daniel immediately began uploading files. Every confession, every identity, every document, every lie, millions of pages. The world watched live. The internet exploded. News stations interrupted programming. Government agencies intervened. Then another screen appeared. Truth initialized. Synchronization dropped. 92%, 85%, 77%. Then lower. People everywhere were reading, understanding, connecting pieces. Then another number, 58%. Then another, 41%. The lies were disappearing. Then Richard Vance arrived at the river. Police officers escorted him. The old man looked broken. He saw Daniel. Then he froze. Father and son stared at each other. 40 years of damage between them. Then Richard said 6 words. I'm sorry I failed you. Daniel looked away, then answered quietly. You didn't fail me. Pause. You failed all of us. The room went silent. Richard nodded. Tears rolled down his face. Then he sat beside Emily. No words. No excuses. Just silence. Then another alert appeared. Synchronization. 18%. Almost over. Then Hale received another message. Forensic analysts had finished processing every document inside St. Michael's Church. The results shocked everyone. There had never been 27 victims. There had been 28. Hale Froze. An entire victim was missing. Then he searched the list. 27 names. No extra person. Then another document appeared. Status. Child 28. Deleted. The room fell silent. Then Hale looked toward Daniel, who was 28. Daniel's face changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. Then he whispered, My sister. The room froze. Another victim. Hidden for decades. Then he continued. She died before the river. Nobody knew she existed. Then another sentence. The council erased her completely. His entire life suddenly made sense. Daniel wasn't trying to save himself. He was trying to save her. Then Emily walked over. She placed a hand on his shoulder, then quietly said, You don't save people by rebuilding ghosts. The room remained silent. Then Daniel nodded. For the first time in 40 years. He let go. Then the final synchronization meter appeared. 3%, 2%, 1%. System terminated. The crowd erupted into applause. Some cried. Some hugged each other. Others simply sat in silence. The nightmare was over. Then every giant screen turned black. Except one. A final video appeared, recorded decades earlier. Thomas Green, the reporter. He smiled. Then he said one final sentence. Tell people the truth before fear tells a bigger story. The video ended. Then the lights shut off. The rain finally stopped. The river became quiet again. The same river that had carried 40 years of lies. The same river that had stolen childhoods. The same river that had almost rewritten thousands of lives. Then Detective Marcus Hale looked around. Everything seemed over. Finally, until his phone vibrated one last time. An unknown message. Only 5 words. You still miss something. The sender. Unknown. And attached beneath it was a photograph nobody had ever seen before. A picture taken in 1987. 28 children, not 27. And standing at the very back was a face that made Hale's blood run cold. Because the child wasn't a stranger. It was him. The world around Detective Marcus Hale suddenly disappeared. The river, the crowd, the helicopters, the police sirens. Everything faded into silence. He stared at the photograph. 28 children. And there he was, a young boy, standing at the very back, 9 years old, wearing a blue jacket, staring directly into the camera. Impossible. Marcus stepped backward. His breathing became uneven. His hands trembled. Then Emily Rhodes slowly took the photograph. She froze. Oh my God! The room fell silent. Daniel Vance looked over. Then his face turned pale. No. Richard Vance sat motionless. Then he whispered. He was there. Marcus looked up. What? Richard swallowed hard. Then he answered. You were there. Marcus shook his head immediately. No. His voice cracked. No, I wasn't. Then Richard pointed toward him. You just don't remember. The room went silent. Everything suddenly connected. Memory suppression, false identities, replacement records, 40 years of lies. Marcus's heart pounded. Then he shouted, That's impossible. Richard lowered his head, then quietly said, You weren't supposed to become a detective. The room froze. Marcus stood perfectly still. Then Richard continued, You were supposed to leave Ohio forever. The world around him began spinning. Then Emily stepped closer. Marcus. He looked at her. She looked terrified. Then she whispered, I know your face. The room went silent. Then she said something nobody expected. You were the boy who helped me escape. Marcus froze. Another memory surfaced. A river. Children running. Crying. Then a flashlight. Someone screaming. Then darkness. Then nothing. He grabbed his head. The memories arrived in fragments. Broken pieces. Incomplete images. Then another sentence emerged from somewhere deep inside him. Run. Don't stop. Run. He stumbled backward. Then Richard spoke. We couldn't erase your memories completely. The room fell silent. Then another truth emerged. Marcus Hale wasn't his original name. He had been reassigned to, just like everyone else. Then Richard opened one final folder. Original identity. Name. Michael Carter. Age. 9 years old. Witness 28. Marcus stopped breathing. He was a missing child. The 28th victim. The one nobody could find. Because nobody had been looking. He had been standing in front of everyone for decades. Then another memory exploded inside his mind. Thomas Green, the reporter, kneeling beside him, smiling, then saying one sentence. If something happens, become someone who protects people. The room went silent. Marcus closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his face. That sentence, that one sentence, it had shaped his entire life without him ever realizing it. Why did he become a detective? Because someone had planted hope inside him before fear could take over. Then Emily smiled sadly. You remembered. Marcus nodded, slowly. Then Daniel looked at him. For 40 years, we've all been chasing ghosts. Marcus looked at him, then answered, No. Another pause. We've been chasing ourselves. The room fell silent. Then one final emergency report arrived. Authorities confirmed that every hidden archive connected to Operation Renewal had been recovered. Every victim, every identity, every secret, every document. Nothing remained hidden anymore. The truth was finally public. Then another report arrived. Ashford would officially dissolve its local government and undergo complete restructuring. The town itself had become a symbol, a warning, a place future generations would study. Then reporters began asking questions. Hundreds of them, thousands online. One question appeared more than any other. How could this happen? Marcus stood beside the river, then answered. It didn't happen overnight. The room stayed silent. Then he continued. It happened one lie at a time. Another pause. It happened every time someone chose fear over truth. The world listened. Then Emily stepped beside him. Don't remember this story because of the crimes. Another pause. Remember it because nobody stopped talking about them. Then Daniel approached. For the first time in his life, he looked peaceful. No anger, no obsession, no mission. Then he handed Marcus one final photograph. 28 children, all smiling, before the river, before the lies, before everything changed. Then Daniel whispered, This is who we really were. Marcus stared at it, then smiled sadly. Children, just children, nothing more. Then Richard Vance slowly stood up. Police officers approached. He didn't resist. He simply held out his hands. Then he said something nobody expected. "I don't deserve forgiveness." The room remained silent. Then he added, "But they deserve better adults." Nobody disagreed. Then he was taken away. The helicopters slowly departed. The floodlights shut off. The river became quiet. Finally, for the first time in 40 years. Quiet. Months passed. Trials began. Documents became public. Victims reunited with families. People discovered their original names. Some embraced them. Some didn't. Some kept the names they had built over decades. Because identity wasn't just paperwork. It was life. It was experience. It was choice. Then one day, Marcus returned to the river. Alone. Emily arrived shortly afterward. Then Daniel. Then Rebecca Mason. Then others. The survivors. 28 chairs stood near the water. One for every child. Some remained empty because not everyone had survived long enough to see the truth. Then Emily placed a flower beside one chair. Thomas Green, the reporter, the man who tried to tell the truth, the man who died trying to protect children he barely knew. Then Marcus sat down, looked at the water, then quietly spoke. "We're done running." Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The wind moved gently through the trees. And for the first time since 1987, nobody was hiding. No false names. No erased identities. No secret organizations. Just people. Broken people. Healing people. Human beings. Then Marcus looked at the old photograph one final time. 28 children. A lifetime stolen. A lifetime recovered. Then he folded it carefully and placed it inside his jacket. Because some memories should never disappear. Not to keep pain alive, but to make sure it never happens again. And somewhere inside a dusty archive room in Ohio, beneath thousands of forgotten files, the original note that reopened everything remained preserved forever. 5 simple words. Check the red toolbox. The sentence that destroyed 40 years of lies. The sentence that gave 28 children their names back. The sentence that finally ended one of Ohio's most haunting cold cases. And after decades of fear, silence, and forgotten evidence, the truth that everyone had been searching for turned out to be painfully simple. Nobody needed a new identity. They only needed someone brave enough to tell the truth.